Do Lent and Easter egg hunts have Jewish origins? Let's find out. This is Rabbi Yossi Madvig, and you're listening to Jews Did It First. Thanks so much for tuning in. Please subscribe, leave a review, whether you're listening on iTunes or Google Play or whatever. Also, please contribute, help keep the lights on, and keep the podcast going. Go to jewishoswego.org/Jews Did It First. Hit the make a donation button in the upper right-hand corner. All right. Things are going crazy over here. It's almost Passover. So we're very busy, and that's why the show's been a little bit later recently. And this week is going to be kind of a double dose of Jews Did It First, since I won't be broadcasting for a couple of weeks because of Passover. I'll see if I can put something together during Passover, but we'll have to play that by ear. So this week I want to talk about something that's very Passover timely related. I've been waiting for a while to do these because I wanted it to be around the time, although one of them we're almost at the end of it. The first thing I want to talk about is Lent. That's right. It's very popular amongst Catholics, the Lenten season. Actually, it seems to have started in about the year 325 during the Council of Nicaea, where they discuss a 40-day Lenten season of fasting. But it's unclear whether that's to be some kind of just something for everybody, or if that's something that is just to be in preparation for becoming a new Christian or something like that. But it's certainly through time became associated with everyone, with all Christians, or at least with all Catholics. So how exactly churches count these 40 days? The Lenten season is a 40-day season before Easter, but how you count those 40 days varies depending on location. So in the East, the Eastern Rite Catholics, one only fasted on weekdays. The weekend doesn't count. The Western Church's Lent was 1 week shorter, but it included Saturdays. So the Eastern didn't include Saturdays or Sundays, but the Western Church did include Saturday. But in both places, it was very strict, very serious. They would eat like one meal per day, and it would be towards the evening. And there was no meat or fish or animal products. It was sort of this, I don't want to say whole 40 diet. And until about, say, the 600s, Lent began on the 40th Sunday. But in Gregory the Great, he was this very famous pope. I believe he's the same pope that we get the Gregorian calendar from, but I'm not 100% sure. Actually, that doesn't make sense. I think he was later. I don't remember. Anyway, he's around the 540 to 604, so the second half of the 6th century. So he actually moves the beginning of Lent to a Wednesday, and that's called Ash Wednesday, which we had a few weeks ago. And that makes the exact number of 40 days in Lent, not counting Sundays, which were the feast days. So Sunday was like the big celebratory day, whereas all the other days, Monday through Saturday, were fast days and very serious times. So he gives the ceremony and the day its name, and Christians came to the church for forgiveness. Gregory marked their heads with ashes, reminding them of the biblical symbol of repentance. As you might remember, you've heard the phrase sackcloth and ashes. That's a biblical phrase, and it reminds us of, we are dust, and to dust we shall return, as it says in Genesis 3. So it's that sort of brings that ash thing over there. Okay, so this is a little bit of the history of Lent. One more quick thing: a couple hundred years later, it starting to get a little bit more relaxed. By the 1400s, they were already eating. I said that they would eat their one meal a day towards the end of the day. But at first they was starting a little bit earlier, like maybe late afternoon, and then by the 1400s, like just as long as it was after 12 noon, then and also things like fish were started to be allowed. And all sorts. It sort of got a little bit laxed, and sometimes nowadays, I mean, you just people, oh, I'm giving up chocolate for Lent or something like this. It's sort of a cliche thing that to give up something for Lent, amongst Catholics, and it's become so ubiquitous. Even Protestants will talk about it. I've even heard Jews joke about it. But so it's become quite a cultural phenomenon. And the reason I wanted to talk about it is because actually, that's right, Jews did it first. So here, not exactly. I don't mean, well, obviously, you could say, what is Lent? Lent, the reason it's this 40-day period, what it actually signifies, it's sort of reminding the Christians of Jesus's 40 days in the wilderness, 40 days in the desert before he started preaching. And there he's tempted by Satan and so on. So there's a couple different routes that I wanted to go with this, and the Jews did it first realm. First of all, biblically speaking, well, there's two things, and they're both biblical. One is I see this as also representative of, I guess, three things. Is Moses' 40 days on the mountain. He was up there, and he didn't eat, and he didn't drink, and that after that 40 days, what does he come down with? The Torah. He's teaching. So you see this replicated in the story of Jesus, where he is out there, he's in the desert or whatever, and he's not eating and so on. And then he comes back, and what does he do? Preach. He teaches supposedly God's word. Obviously, as a Jew, I would have to say not as much, but we'll for the purposes of this story, we'll leave it at that. Excuse me. Now, the other thing that I wanted to say is the 40 years in the desert. So again, you have that 40 parallels, not 40 days, but it's 40 years. And the 40 years in the desert, obviously, that they were wandering, and they're tempted many times, right? God says there's these 10 times where they sort of tested him or rebelled against him. And so there's all of these trials and tribulations while the Jews are in the desert, and they come out on the other end in the promised land, and they get the temple and so on. So that's one aspect of it. The one I really wanted to focus on actually is that if you take, like we said, it's 40 days, but really you have the Sundays in there as well. So if you count the Sundays, it's 47. 47 days. It would be 46, but I'm counting Easter Sunday also to make it 47. Now, this is close to what's called Sfirat HaOmer. Now, Sfirat HaOmer are a counting of 49 days. And if you look in the Bible, of course, the Jews are commanded to count 49 days from the time in which they left Egypt, which was on Passover, until the giving of the Torah and they have, after that 7 full weeks, they have Shavuot, they have the giving of the Torah. Now, it's questionable whether the holiday and the giving of the Torah exactly matched up, because it could fall out on any one of 3 days when the months go by the sighting of the moon. It can fall out on the 5th of the month of Sivan, the 6th, or the 7th. But they come out and they get the Torah. So they count these 49 days. So again, 47 days, 49 days, and it's really the inverse, because what is the Lenten season is 40 days leading up to, or 47 days, the 7 weeks leading up to the holiday of Easter, which of course is on, usually falls out on Passover. And the Sfirat HaOmer is the inverse of that, or the Lent is the inverse of this, whereas that's from Passover to Shavuot, the other end, the 7 weeks on the other side of Easter, so to speak. And so what it seems like is sort of the Christian practice inverted that time and put it over here and on the front side. And the whole point of this season of the 49 days of the Omer after Passover that we're counting is working on ourselves, is becoming better people. It says that the Jewish people, when they were in Egypt, had sunken to the 49th gate of impurity. And had they been there any minute longer, they would have sunk into the 50th level of impurity, which would have been irredeemable. And they count in each day represents a spiritual facet of the soul, which I won't get into right now, but it's very worthwhile to look up. The powers of the soul, the 7 midot, the 7 emotions or attributes of the spiritual realm, and each one of those 7 includes all of the others within it. So you have kindness and you have severity, for example, chesed and gevura, kindness and strength. Kindness has strictness within it. And likewise, strictness has kindness within it. So, for instance, when a child wants to play with a knife, the kindness in you, you just want to give. You want to give them the kindness. You want to be nice. You want to be their friend. But the stringency, the severity says, no, obviously you can't give them a knife. So when you're being stringent, but you're doing it out of kindness, because obviously if you give the child the knife, it's dangerous. He could hurt himself. So each one of these 7 attributes includes the 7 others within it. 7 times 7, 49. So here is a pretty interesting example. Now, again, is it based on that? Are the 40 days of the Lenten season, or the 47 days based on that? I don't think so, but I just found it interesting that you have this period of reflective time of what's called teshuvah, of repentance, of coming close to God. We've had this since biblical times, and here you see what does the Christians do? What in the Christian Bible, it makes this whole period of Jesus going in the desert for the 40 days, and it seems to co-opt that. Although I'm not sure if it was intentionally that way, but it's interesting how you see that parallel. So that is part 1 of Jews did it first. Now, part 2 that I want to talk about, also very, very timely. Now, as you know, we're coming up on Passover. It's in a week. And one of the most famous things of, hold on. Get ahead of myself. On Passover falls out Easter. Okay. Now, it usually follows the equinox, and Passover is usually on the equinox. Sometimes, like next year, we have a leap year, so it's going to be a little bit later. And so Easter goes a little bit before Passover, but almost always it's on Passover. And what is one of the customs on Easter that everybody knows about? That is, of course, the Easter egg hunt. Now, where exactly this started, it's a little bit murky. The egg, obviously, in pre-Christian religions and celebrations, has always been a symbol of rebirth, of spring. And so the Easter egg itself was sort of this symbol for early Christians, the egg as this rebirth, right? The resurrection, a clear symbol there for that. And so the egg was also like this tomb, right? Which he was in the tomb and he came out, so they hide the egg. And there's a professor, actually, with the Graduate Theological Union of Berkeley. Her name is Lizette Larson Miller. And she actually traces the custom of Easter egg hunting to the Protestant Christian reformer, Martin Luther. Although I'm not sure if he was really made a reformation or reformer. It seems like he kind of made a revolution. He sort of broke off and changed things. He didn't really reform the church from the inside. It sort of became a separate movement. But anyway, she says that, we know that, she says, quote, "We know that Martin Luther had Easter egg hunts where the men hid the eggs for the women and children, and it probably has this connection back to this idea of eggs being the tomb." So that's a work over there. That's a pretty modern work. Now, so at least in the 17th century, that's a little bit after Martin Luther. No, when did Martin Luther live now? I forget. In 16 something. But anyway, so he's in the 17th century. I forget the exact years now. And this idea of an Easter bunny who brings the Easter eggs, that already had actually been known, or it had been disseminated. And Easter egg hunts were introduced to England, where we see in 1892 there was a lecture of a professor of Latin at University College in London. His name was A.E. Haussmann, and at his inaugural lecture, he mentions in Germany at Easter time they hide colored eggs about the house and garden, and the children may amuse themselves in discovering them. So that's always nice. Wonderful, beautiful. Okay, so everyone knows about the Easter egg thing. When did it start? A little unclear. It seems that going back certainly to the 17th century, and it seems to be, it could have, if already it's being mentioned there, it seems to be an even older custom. Perhaps it was, a few centuries before that. I'm not exact. It's a little bit murky when it started. So we'll go with 17th century. So let's go with the 16th century, 100 years earlier at least, and it'll be fun. But of course, Jews did it first. Not with Easter eggs, however. There is a famous custom on Passover, which, as we said, Easter and Passover kind of come together. The custom of hiding the afikomen. The afikomen is a piece of matzah that is eaten at the end of the Seder, the end of the Passover Seder. Now, it represents the paschal lamb that was given as the sacrifice for Passover. And when you eat that at the end of the meal after you've had everything, so you're completely sated. So you're only eating it because there is a mitzvah, there's a commandment to eat it. You shouldn't be eating it because, oh, it's so yummy, or oh, I'm so hungry. You should be eating it for the mitzvah. And so, since the temple had been destroyed at the end of the first century, we started using the afikomen, a piece of matzah, to represent that. And we eat a matzah at the end of the Seder as representative of that Passover offering. And there was a custom of hiding the afikomen, so the children at the Seder will, quote unquote, steal it. They'll go find it. Excuse me. And then they get a reward. And it's based on a Gemara. Rabbi Eliezer says that one should grab the matzahs so that the children won't fall asleep. Excuse me. And according to the Rambam, so that's in the Gemara. So we're talking Rabbi Eliezer. So we're talking about he lived, I believe, in the 1st or 2nd century, and the Gemara itself was codified in the 5th century. And according to the Rambam, who lived in the 11th century, I believe, so he says that Rabbi Eliezer is referring to the practice of stealing the afikomen. So he's sort of interpreting when it says, grab the matzah so the children won't fall asleep. He refers to the practice of stealing the afikomen so that the children should stay awake until the end of the meal. And there are various other mentions of this practice throughout history. There's a Haggadah, Otzer Divrei Hamafarshim, which has different commentaries in there, and it cites several reasons for this custom of stealing the afikomen. One of them is that it demonstrates the love for the mitzvah of the afikomen. So we're stealing, we're taking it, we want it to be ours, and the kids are searching out and finding it because they want to find it. They want to go and search out the mitzvah. And then there's another explanation that says the custom is an enactment of the biblical account of Jacob stealing the blessings that were supposed to be given to his brother Esav. You remember Jacob and Esav, they were twins, and Esav was the first one out, so he was a little bit older, and he was supposed to get the blessings of the firstborn. But what does Jacob do? He goes in and he pretends to be Esav, and he gets the blessings instead. So as sort of like this concept of stealing the blessings, so too we are stealing the afikomen. And interestingly enough, the Medrash tells us, I explained in past episodes what the Medrash is, you go listen to those, it's sort of this extra biblical accounting of the oral Torah, the oral traditions of the Jewish people given to Moses at Mount Sinai. And the Medrash explains that this event happened on Passover. So there's a connection there between stealing the blessings and stealing the afikomen, and therefore the children steal the afikomen and they get the blessings, and which, the blessings could be whatever they bargain for. I want a trip to the zoo. I want an airplane. I don't know, whatever. Interestingly enough, Chabad custom is not to steal the afikomen. We don't like this concept of stealing. I'm not knocking the custom, as we've seen. It is a very well-founded custom. It's mentioned in the Midrash. It's mentioned by the Rambam. It's mentioned in the Talmud. It is a very staunch Jewish custom. And if that is a custom that you guys do, that you've done in your home, please, by all means, go right ahead. But just letting you know, there is also a strain of thought that says it's not good because it teaches about stealing and you're sitting there trying to bargain with your parents and stuff. But it is nonetheless a good thing. So here I see a very clear parallel between this finding the Easter egg and on Easter hiding it so the children will find it, and then hiding the afikomen on Passover so the children will find it. So just seems another instance of Jews did it first. So the Passover season leading up to Passover and on Passover itself, or leading up to Passover from the Christian tradition, but following Passover from the Jewish tradition. Seems to be a lot of really interesting parallels there that historically Jews did it first. There are so many Torah thoughts going through my head that I want to share with you because Passover is coming, but there's just not enough time. I highly encourage you to research the things mentioned in the Haggadah, especially the 10 plagues. It is so rich and so powerful. All of the meaning and the history behind so much of what we do during the Seder and what we're talking about in the story of the Exodus. It's such a beautiful thing. So what I want to talk about now is that's something easy to research for you. You can Google that. You can find so many things online. What I wanted to talk about actually was matzah and wine. And these are two opposites, yet they are referring to the same thing. What do I mean? Matzah is bland. It's tasteless. Some say it tastes like cardboard. I think it depends on the matzah. Some matzah is actually not so bad. But it could be tough to eat sometimes. And that's actually the whole point. The whole point of matzah is that it represents what's called in Hasidic lexicon, in Kabbalistic terminology, bittul. You have bittul means self-nullification. You have leavened product. It's puffed up. It's haughty. It's arrogance. And then you have bittul. You have matzah. It's flat. It's humble. That's the whole point. And it's tasteless. It's not about the enjoyment of the mitzvah. In fact, there is a detail of the mitzvah of eating matzah that if it's forced down your throat and you don't even taste it, you still have fulfilled the mitzvah of eating matzah on Passover. You don't even have to taste it because it's not about the taste. Then you have the wine. What's the wine? Wine is good. Wine tastes great. So this is also representing the mitzvah. But what is that? That's the joy of the mitzvah, the taste of the mitzvah. It's exciting. You make it fun and exciting. Judaism should be fun. I had a rabbi in yeshiva who would tell us all the time, if it's not fun, you're doing something wrong. God's not here to burden you with hardship and just a litany of do's and don'ts for no reason. It's supposed to be enjoyable. You're supposed to integrate it, make it a part of your life so that it's exciting and fresh and new. Now, in the beginning, that's so easy because everything is new, especially if you didn't grow up religious and you become religious later on. Everything's so exciting. I'm putting on tefillin for the first time. Oh, Shabbos is great. All this good stuff. But as time goes on, you get used to it and it becomes, sort of run of the mill. It becomes rote, and that's how you do it. And it's like the matzah, you do it because you do it and you have to, and that's what it's all about. But the wine is there to remind us it's gotta have a taste. It's gotta be geschmack, as we say in Yiddish. It's gotta be it's got to be delicious and exciting. So I give everyone a blessing that this Passover, you should really try to look at it through the eyes of the wine, that it should be fun, it should be exciting, and you should just be overjoyed to be doing the mitzvahs of Passover, to have the Seder, to really get involved and make it fun and enjoyable. And you should also be sure to take the lesson of the matzah, that even when it's tough, and even though the Seder's going so late, and you're so tired, and you've still got another 10 pages of the Haggadah to go, just do it. Take out a commentary to make it a little more enjoyable. Do something. Make it, even though it's hard, just do it. So we have to have both. We have to have the matzah, where we have to do it even though it's hard, and we have to make it enjoyable and fun and exciting and geschmack, just like the taste of the wine. So, l'chaim, l'chaim. I wish everyone a kosher and freilich and Pesach, a kosher and happy Passover, and I look forward to doing another podcast after Passover.